Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar today. Would like to, just especially welcome you from wherever you are located. Again, invite you to put in the comments section of the platform that you're watching from your name and where you're watching from today. We're really excited about this Zehr Institute webinar today with our new friends from Restorative Houston. We're going to have guests Anita, LeKedric, Lizbeth, and Zehr joining us to talk about how they're working at creating a restorative city in Houston through intergenerational partnerships. They're going to do some of their own introductions, so I'm just going to go ahead and add them to our stage and let them take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to meet the folks. Evelyn, you're in one of our slides. It's great to see our co-author, Heather, Michael, Toronto, Nepal. We're truly excited to be here. My name is Anita Wadhwa, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I'm going to share a few slides with you. And we're going to start today with some introductions, and then we'll talk about what exactly is a restorative city. We'll talk about the roots of our organization, Restorative Houston. Then I will pause and I will turn it over to the youth doing the work, and I will ask them some questions, and then we'll open it up to the group. We do like interaction. This is a webinar format, so it's different. But if you drop comments or questions as they occur to you, we'll try to address it in the moment if possible. If not, we can address it later on. And we want to acknowledge that because circles come from Indigenous people worldwide, that we have to acknowledge the ongoing harm against Indigenous communities. And we're committed to supporting Indigenous voices in Houston and in Texas and beyond, and the movements, and recognize that the land we occupy belongs to the Karankawa, Ishak, Huahutecan, Sana, and other peoples. So I'm going to pass it off to LeKedric and Liz to introduce themselves, and Z will be joining us a little bit later, Zerestra Dirden. So we'll start with Lizbeth. And the questions are basically anything to introduce yourself. How old are you? How did you get involved in restorative justice? And what is it that draws you to the philosophy?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lizbeth Velasquez. I am a 17-year-old senior from Yespet Brace Oaks, and I got introduced to restorative justice from my amazing teacher, Miss Lizbeth. She used restorative practices in my AP English class, and it really just made the whole class a much better experience, and it really got me engaged because I learned that I really liked hearing other people's perspectives, and I liked having other ideas in the back of my mind because I think having 10 thoughts is better than having just my own thought.
Okay. And my name is LeKedric Owens. I'm also in 12th grade, but I am 18 years old. And the way that I learned about restorative justice is through also by Miss Lapin, but mine was more of like an accidental thing. I actually learned about it through 9th grade. I didn't know what it was, but I was making my schedule and it said restorative justice. I didn't know what none of the words meant, but I knew I wanted to try it out because I like trying new things out. So I signed up for the class. The next year came. I came into the classroom, and from the way Miss Lapin was explaining it, she told us, "Oh, we're just going to be talking to people and stuff." Like I heard from other people, you're just talking to other people. So I was like, "Okay, the classroom where you just talk." But it was more of like an organized type of talk. I'm thinking, I'm just going to socialize, but it was still socializing, but like in an organized way. So my first time, I came in with a circle. She had her talking piece, passed around to each person. Each person got to say what they wanted to say, what was on their mind, and throughout that first experience, I was heavily excited. I was ready. I was like, okay, this is something I can do. I just got to talk, say what I feel, how my feelings are. And it's nice and professional. It's nice and laid out. And yeah. And that's about it.
Thank you, LeKedric.
Sure.
And I'll tell a little bit about myself. And I also want to reference that some of the slides we'll be showing you, some of the diagrams are actually from a little book of youth engagement that I co-wrote with Evelyn Aquino and Heather Manchester. And so I just want to give full credit where it's due when I show you some of the slides that we're using to explain how we do our restorative justice work. I just want to show you a photo of my grandfather to explain what attracts me to restorative justice work. So both of my grandparents on both sides were refugees from what is now Pakistan during the partition of India. And they, as well as millions of people, as you can see in this photo, who went by foot, who went on trains, had to cross a border, and there was a lot of bloodshed. There were rapes, and none of this was ever discussed in my family. And I didn't learn about this history until I was much older. And when I asked some of the elders in the community about it, they're like, well, I don't know. No one ever told me about the experience. And so that's really part of why I do the work, is part of generational healing, as well as my own internal healing journey, and making sure that we bring to the surface things like historical harm, because it literally lives in our genes, and what happened to our ancestors is transferred onto us now. And so that's what attracts me to this philosophy. I'm going to pass it to Liz to talk about what do we mean by a restorative city. Shout out to Evelyn, who's on the call.
So, what is a restorative city? A restorative city addresses all forms of conflict, harm, and oppression, and offers healing. We aim to create safety, healthy people, strong communities, and vibrant, socially just environments. It leads us towards a more interconnected city that is invested in uplifting the humanity of all people and creating respectful relations with each other as well as with the animals, land, and water. By Evelyn Zeller from Vancouver. So, what would a restorative city look like? In practice, restorative justice adopts these models: circle of support and accountability, city conferences, circle of peace, family group conferences. A restorative city should also have specific services and training for community members, such as restorative counseling on the damage suffered and or conflicts to manage, restorative listening services at law enforcement offices, training on restorative practices in schools and in local social and justice services by a European Forum Organization for Restorative Justice.
All right. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about Houston. So first, we're going to start off with like more of the conflicts of Houston. So first, black students are 7 times more likely to be suspended than white students in Houston Independent School Districts, known as HISD. Now, in HISD, libraries are being replaced with detention centers. And also, Black people make up 28% of the population, but represent 51% of the jail population as of March 2024. The Harris County has the third largest jail in the United States. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is being banned in the state. Now we got the negatives out of the way, and there's also some positive things about Houston. So over 1 in 4 people in the Houston 3-county region are immigrants. Houston ranks as number 1 most diverse large city in the U.S. based on 5 diversity categories. There are individuals and groups doing RJ in some form all over the city.
Thank you, LeKedric. So now we're going to go into the roots of Restorative Houston, because as a collective of people, we've been around for 10 years. And I'm going to talk about my own personal journey. It was myself and a few teachers who founded this organization 10 years ago. And part of my own internal journey that I alluded to earlier was the internalized racism, internalized sexism, internalized colorism that I felt growing up, just from the systems we grow up in. So being the daughter of a Indian woman, Indian man, and people commenting on my skin tone. You can see this is an ad from India called skin whitening. So I really internalized this self-hatred. I wouldn't even look in the mirror because I hated myself so much. And part of that was also in schooling. I had good teachers, but at the same time in my world history class, I had to memorize the wives of Henry VIII who were beheaded in order. Yet at the end of the book, they put the entire continent of Africa and the countries of India and China into one chapter. So even that marginalized people of color and my own identity, letting me know, okay, this is not valued as much in our education system. So I really, like I said, grew up hating myself. High school was very difficult for me, basically because of my internalized hatred. And so part of my healing is I decided that as a profession, I wanted to make sure that young people felt seen, heard, and loved, that they didn't go through those similar struggles as much as possible. So I became a high school teacher in 2001 in the Houston Independent School District. And while I was there, students who were suspended and expelled would often disappear. And you would hear about students going into the disciplinary alternative education program called CEP. It was a for-profit school, and on the street they called it Children Entering Prison. And as I was burning out from teaching 5 years later, I noticed that the intersection of teachers dropping out of the profession and students dropping out of school was discipline. And what were we doing wrong in schools that people simply didn't want to be there? And so I got my doctorate, and during my research, I learned about circles and restorative justice from many people. And one of my main mentors is Janet Connors. She's featured in a documentary, and she told people in circles, including the young people in 2 schools where I did research, about how she initiated victim offender dialogue in Massachusetts. What happened was 4 men were involved in the murder of her son. And when she was in the courtroom, they all got different sentences. And the man who actually stabbed her son got off completely free, and his family celebrated in the courtroom. And so she thought, what kind of justice is this? And she was seeking her own justice. And so she met with one of the men involved. They shared baby photos. They shared their stories. They had very similar upbringings. And she was able to have some empathy and see from the point of view of where the systems had failed our young people. And she said, you have a piece of my forgiveness, and you have the rest when you stay clean and sober. You are a good father, a mentor in the community, and you visit my son Joel's grave with your mother. He kept those agreements, and that has been part of her healing journey. She can never be healed from that loss, but she now does circles in prison, with families, in schools. I consider her a dear friend and a mentor. And I thought, well, we really need this in Houston. This kind of humanity is what is missing. So when I came back to Houston, I actually was an in-school suspension teacher. They didn't have restorative justice coordinator positions. And while I was there, I was given the opportunity to teach my own class. It was called Leadership. And I turned it into a restorative justice class. And through working with these young people, we decided to start a community group called the Restorative Justice Collaborative of Houston. And I want to give credit for our motto, which is let's start a movement, to Xavier Chavez, who's featured on the left. Xavier and another student in that first class, which you can see their photo here with Janet. Janet flew down to speak at our conference. They were in different gangs. They hated each other. I had no idea. And at the end of the year, we do a story of self. And that's where they write a narrative where they are trying to persuade others about the power of restorative justice by telling a little bit about their own journey. After Angel, the other student, spoke, Xavier went up to him and gave him a hug and said, we have to stop all this. We're from the same community. We need to start a movement. Let's start a movement. And people in the class, we were tearing up. We were shocked. You know, we had never seen these kind of transformative moments in the classroom. And so I want to share a little clip of Xavier, who still shows up, still works with me, came and did circle with my students last year, so that you can get a little bit of understanding of the work we do.
Continue our Fox in Focus series, Breaking the Cycle. It's our latest initiative highlighting the resources around Houston, looking to curb the wave of youth crime in the city.
Such an important thing to do. Shelby Rose introduces us to 2 people who are hoping to put an end to the school to prison pipeline. Good morning, Shelby.
Good morning. Well, Melissa and Delon, for one school teacher who is leaving the profession to pursue this endeavor full time, her faith in the public school system is virtually non-existent. But she hopes with the help of one former student, they can make a difference. This is Dr. Anita Wadhwa, a former teacher who's on a mission to disrupt the school to prison pipeline.
I started teaching in HISD from 2001 to 2006,
And I think I was already in the midst of the school to prison pipeline. I just didn't have the language for it.
The Texas Criminal Justice Coalition defines it as the result of practices that force students out of the classroom and into the justice system. And Wadhwa says she was a part of the problem.
The advice we got is just keep writing them up until they go to CEP. And CEP was the Disciplinary Alternative Education Program. On the street, they called it Children Entering Prison.
So she wanted to do something about it, looking into what's called restorative justice.
It's about the interconnectedness of all people. It's about relationships, building relationships, sustaining relationships, and then repairing harm in community when those relationships are fractured.
And Wadhwa says repairing that harm can be facilitated through healing circles, opening up the pathway for candid conversations with students.
If the dialogue can create the conflict, then the dialogue can also create healing and understanding.
But she knew she couldn't do it alone.
I wanted them to hear from someone who had been vulnerable, who was male, who had gone through some hard things.
My name is Zehr. I got introduced to the gang lifestyle around 4th or 5th grade. They were the ones who showed me any type of like friendship or any type of like family type of love.
Then drugs and other illegal activities started Chavez's cycle behind bars when he was just 13. Then one day in high school, a fight in a bathroom with a rival gang member landed him in in-school suspension. And you can guess who was the teacher.
One of the first things she told me was, "Hey, come sit down with me. Like, let's have a chat." And I'm over here like, I don't know you, what do I have to talk to you about?
But through those open conversations, Chavez eventually left the gang lifestyle and now has joined Wadhwa in helping other vulnerable teens.
Without Dr. Wadhwa and restorative justice, where would you be right now?
Probably jail. Probably jail. Because of meeting her and that program, I was able to go to Harvard University and I was able to present my story there.
And he continues to share his story.
Growing up, I had nobody being there for me. So I feel like maybe if someone was there for me, or if I would have heard somebody's story, maybe I wouldn't have gone the way I went. Maybe a lot of the pain that I carried wouldn't be there.
And Chavez hopes other school administrators see the impact and take action.
I look at everything that she did for me, and I feel like crying just because she was there for me. So my message to them would be just, if you come across somebody who's genuine, keep them in creativity to try to combat all that negativity going on in the school.
Create a movement.
Create a movement. Yes, ma'am.
And when it comes to the practice of using peace circles in lieu of harsh punishment, Wadhwa does say if a student does not continuously fulfill their commitments of changed behavior, then a punitive response is used. Reporting in the studio, Shelby Rose, Fox 26 News.
An important topic of discussion, Shelby. Thanks a lot.
Okay. You need young people to tell you to hit the arrow to go to the next slide. See, intergenerational partnerships in action. So what I learned from Xavier and the young people when I started this program, and by program, I mean when I just started doing circles, okay? It's a philosophy, it's not a program. I was really trying to run the show. And, you know, it's because we have a lot of adultism. We feel like we're the authority and we're going to pass on the knowledge. And so in our book, we talk about this idea of a youth engagement spiral, that there's layers and levels to engaging young people in justice work. So at the bottom is manipulation, decoration, tokenism, and that would be the mayor putting Liz and LeKedric on a city council photo and saying, look at how we partner with young people, but maybe they were just a photo opportunity and you did not engage them in conversation. So going up, it would be youth informing the work you're doing, consulting youth and adult being an equal partnership, and then youth running the show, and then youth and adult having equity, meaning, yes, young people need to run the show, but they're also teenagers. They're not certified teachers, right? And as adults, maybe I can offer something that they can, and I would step up. And then finally, at the end, what we're going to talk about is liberation, completely going outside of these categories. arrow button, right? Okay. So as I moved to a different school, and anytime I left a school, it was normally because the restorative justice program, the leader who I had followed, the principal, a new one came and it kind of withered away. The program, the interest in the program was not prioritized. So I went to this school that was a restorative school, Yes Prep Northbrook High School, and I started to reference this, I didn't have the spiral in mind, but I thought, well, I have to let go of the adultism. And as you can see on the left, one of the students in that restorative justice class ultimately became the teacher of the class. And on the right, Cassandra, who's in the class, she also became a trainer. And they actually work with me and consult when they have time as paid trainers. So I was starting to move away from me telling you how to do circle to them leading the circles and running and learning by doing. And so in our book, we talk about that to do restorative justice work, we have two core values. The first one is it has to be rooted in liberation. It's not just we're doing this to reduce the school to prison pipeline. We're doing this to reduce the recidivism rate in prison. There's got to be a liberatory lens. So on the first box, and a lot of people have seen this was our version in the book, and you can always critique them, but it's a great starting point for conversation. In equality in the school system, we're going to give everyone the same support, even if they're up on higher land versus being on sunken land. And they can see the show, right? The show is the celebration, they reap the rewards, but there's a fence in the way to being able to experience the show. In equity, we say, you know what, some people need more supports, so we'll give a few more boxes, or maybe the crates will be longer, and then everyone can see the show. And then in justice, we go, wait, why the hell do we have a fence? And we start to break down the fence. And in liberation, we are just freed. And so our core value is we're trying to get to that liberation aspect. And the other core value is this work has to be intergenerational. We cannot do it alone. It can't be young people doing it by themselves. It can't be elders running it. And when we say intergenerational, we don't just mean Anita, the teacher, and a high school student. We mean our elementary school's youth being mentored by middle school youth, our elders mentoring adults, our high school youth being mentored by alumni. So we think about it in all of these broad ways. And before I stop to tell you a little bit more about the organization, this was sort of the final straw for me in terms of needing to leave education for my own liberation. I loved the students that I taught in my last school. However, I realized an oasis is not enough. I can't do circles in school and then they leave and it's a really potentially punitive environment in the school, or it's not a school-wide movement. It's not a neighborhood movement. It's not a community movement. It was just too hard. We had policies where books are being banned. I'm an English teacher and you're banning books. Then they're saying the school board, well, if you have a trans student who uses a pronoun that's different from what they were given at birth, you are supposed to call the parents. And I just felt like I was betraying my own ideals. The student on the lower left, his name is Cadence. He was in my English class. After the anti-trans policy passed, he dropped out of school because a teacher said, well, I'm going to call you by the name that's on this roster. And again, that was just a moment of cruelty. Regardless of what she thinks about trans students, she was intentionally doing something that she knew could be harmful to the child. And so I just decided, you know what? We've been around for 10 years as a group of people. I'm going to do a nonprofit. And that's what I got to do for my own liberation right now. So instead of the long name, Restorative Justice Collaborative of Houston, we said Restorative Houston. And our mission is to create an intergenerational cohort of RJ practitioners who will strengthen community ties, promote healing, and provide non-punitive models of harm repair. This is a photo from one of our monthly community circles. The impetus for me to quit teaching was I got a grant, and I didn't get it in Houston, which I consider RJ Desert. I got it from a national organization, and it was a gender justice grant. And we decided to do a sisterhood circle for girls of color. Black girls are most often overly disciplined in schools because they are adultified. They're treated as adults. Their behaviors are misinterpreted because of cultural differences. And so Lizbeth was actually in the sisterhood circle. So I'd love for you to speak about what did we do? It was 4 Saturdays in a library What did we do during that time?
In the first beginning circles, we just got to know each other and we got to really understand what restorative justice was. And later on, as we continued meeting, we realized that we didn't have to hang out. We didn't have to talk online for hours to become connected, because by the second circle, we already felt like a community. And by becoming a community, we worked better together. We started being more open and we started seeking out more opportunities, not only for ourselves, but for each other. And we just saw a lot of growth within our circle, and we were all growing at the same pace. And if we saw that someone was struggling as a community, we were able to help and notice that they needed help. And it was just really, really enlightening and a great experience.
And actually, Lizbeth is still working with us. The same girls joined the Advanced Sisterhood Circle series, and we pay the young people. So Lizbeth, they had to come to 4 sessions, and they got paid $250 from the grant. And I just wanted you to see some of the data we collected. Just look at it for 1 minute, and then if you want to drop in the chat, what is something that jumps out to you? So the red is what they put on a survey with this statement, and the red is the percent of girls who agree or strongly agreed, and the post is after the program. And I would say what jumps out to me is that last statement, I'm comfortable addressing conflict. To jump from 37 to 84% was phenomenal to me, and here's why. We didn't even focus on learning healing circles. We didn't even role play a healing circle. The 4 Saturdays were solely committed to community building. And yet the restorative way of being, the way of having restorative conversations, having empathy, I feel like it intuitively gives you a certain skill set or a comfort level with having to address uncomfortable issues. I'm just looking at some of your comments right now. Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you. We have someone from Ethiopia. I'm just trying to toggle back and forth from seeing your comments. So this is what Restorative Houston is. And right now we're just trying to get national attention, I think, because a lot of our funding, well, all of our grant funding so far has come from national funders. As you can see, we're in a very punitive environment. And so I think that there is interest in what we're doing. There's interest in investing in ways to transform what's happening in Houston. And I just want to come full circle. You see the student on the left, Cadence, the one who dropped out, he ended up going back to school, and he's now actually on the board of Restorative Houston. And so being outside of institutions has actually been so healing and so empowering. And I mean, my mental health is better. And, you know, it's not a me thing. When you look at this photo, Tisha Wilson in the middle in the red, she's part of Fusion Houston, and everything we're able to do is through partnerships. And it's people that I've known for a decade who we are volunteering, stepping up. So our community pilots are, as we said, the sisterhood circles. We're going to be doing LGBTQ plus virtual circles, especially with all the anti-trans legislation happening. In May, we're going to be doing elder circles for Older American Month. And we've been doing transformative justice work with a collective of artists. However, we still believe that we want to work inside of institutions because people have to show up to school every day. There are people in jail every day. There are people in hospitals. And so we are trying to pilot brotherhood circles inside youth detention facilities. I do a school-based sisterhood circle on another middle school campus. We've done training in a domestic violence shelter. And we're also going to be working in a private school to tell them how to do youth-led restorative justice. And I'm going to just share this, and then I'm going to ask, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and ask the young people some questions, which is, we have a tension right now, is that how do we make Houston a restorative city? So our theory is that if we're intergenerational and we have liberatory RJ practices, that what we're actually trying to restore is humanity. Dorothy Vandering, the scholar, says, people always say there's a tension between restorative and transformative justice, but what we're really restoring is not a broken institution, but our humanity. So the issue is many of us identify, including myself, as abolitionists. We don't believe in the systems as they are right now, but we're hopeful that organizing outside of institutions can lead to our own community-led restorative justice. So I just want to name that tension as we're moving forward, and I'm going to stop sharing. And Z is here. Hi, Z. How are you?
I'm fine. Hi.
Hi. Can you introduce yourself? We're happy to see you right now.
Hi, my name is Z. That's a nickname. I usually go by Zerestra. I'm 18 years old. I go to HCC Houston Community College, and I learned about restorative justice through my sister circle that we do like almost every month, I want to say. And that's it.
That is it. And you're still doing circles. And so I'm going to start asking you questions because the three students come to this work from a very different vantage point. So we're going to just start with, and I'll start with LeKedric. What is your vision for restorative justice in your own life?
The vision for restorative justice in my own life is like basically avoiding conflict and solving problems. And I would say those two main points because it's a lot. It happens a lot in my friend groups. So I would use it like, say if there is like something that we all disagree on, like every single one of us, we can all come together. It might not be as organized as it is in like an actual circle, but I would like try to like have it to where, okay, here, one person talk one at a time. We each get a turn to talk. You all get your own opinion and say what you want to say. Put all the opinions together so we can actually solve the problem. And then it's either we come to a conclusion that, oh, okay, basically doing all this argument for nothing and that we can just go on and live on with our lives, or we just come to a solution and then we just talk it out and then just move on with your life. And that's how I use it in my daily life.
Awesome. And what about you, Z? How do you think restorative justice shows up in your own life?
Well, I would say that restorative justice shows up in my life. I would say a similar way, but I also have other things that also helps that restorative justice also helps with. Like I would say like things such as at home, I could take the things that I learned in a circle, which is patience and giving everybody the chance to talk, which is almost as similar as to what he said, and take it and use it at home instead of just going rowdy at each other and arguing back and forth with each other.
Yeah, I think it's helped me and my mom. I don't know if my mom's on the call, but hey, Mom, if you are, whenever we argue, she's just like, okay, thanks for the restorative justice at the end. What about you, Liz?
For me, like, I really like how you mentioned that this was an organization built all through connections. And at first, like for me, it's something that you could see, but it wasn't until I actually got to experience that. I went to actually a scholarship interview, and there was my interviewer. I had never met her before, had never seen her face before. I knew nothing about her, but she actually used to work with Anita in the past. She was a former student, and without us even having to say anything to each other, we already had something that connected both of us. And that's something, like I said, it's beyond words that can express. It's something that occurred through restorative justice. And I hope that I can be able to promote more influences like that and more connections, because I don't want to spread the influence of restorative justice into a community and for it to stay in that community, because that's not what restorative justice is about. It's about expanding it, and that's what I really hope to bring.
Can you talk about what the impact of circles has been on your high school experience? And then Z did not have circles, so Z can talk about the absence. But what has the presence or absence of circle culture contributed to high school here?
So I feel as if the presence of circles, I feel like it built my leadership skills by a lot. Like it built my leadership skills and it brought out my personality more. Cause going through circles, I realized like back then I did realize like I like to talk a lot. I don't like being alone is what I've noticed. But like since I've done circles, I realized that I know how to talk, but I know how to like talk about things. Like say if there's a certain subject, we can touch on that and I can actually go into detail about that subject. And then with my leadership skills, I realized that like some people see me in a different way. Like they see me like I'll be like participating in what I'm doing right now. A lot of people wouldn't like expect me to be doing it, but like some people know my personality, like, oh yeah, he always participates in things like that. So that's how they see me as like a leader, because he's always doing all these things, or he's always putting his face out there and like doing what he does. Like he's always just being out there. So
That's my
doing,
mom.
man?
Great
That's
to
her.
see young
Yeah.
people carrying the work. LeKedric, I have a question. If
Yeah.
you started already as a talkative person,
Yeah.
well, how did Circle change you?
It just changed. Well, first it changed how like I represent myself in front of like kids that are like, I would say like younger than me, because I think I did a circle with kids that were like all like middle schoolers. I think I did a circle with them, or I was just talking to them, and I realized like I think I had said something one day, and they started catching on to what I was saying, and it wasn't like a good thing though. Like I had said something that like they had found it like funny though, and then they would just kept saying it and saying. I was like, okay, guys, wait, hold on, let's not copy that. But then like I realized like a lot of these kids, like they either like if they see you doing something, they see like how good you're doing in life, and they see how like, you know, oh, he's always doing good things and good things like this, so whatever he's doing right, I guess I'm okay with doing it also, and what he's doing, so I can also follow him and see him as a role model. And you know, I would say that.
So how has circle culture impacted you and your schooling? And I don't know, maybe you don't have anything to compare it to. It might just be that this is all you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, when I first went to actual restorative justice circle, it was like my worst nightmare. I was a very socially awkward person. I was very shy. I didn't like to socialize or talk to anyone. So being put in an environment where the sole purpose is to have interactions and talk to people, it wasn't the best place for me to be at. So I grew this internal fear of circles actually, and I tried to avoid them as much as possible. But then I stepped into my AP English class, and the first thing the teacher asked us to do was to get into a circle. And it allowed me to confront my own feelings about circles, but then actually being in circle allowed me to express further feelings that I had deep down that I didn't even know I had. I didn't even have a space to actually open up and talk about them. And once I did, it was healing. Even if the circle wasn't meant to be healing, it was healing in its own way. And it just allowed me to be a more outgoing person, more community person, and someone that just wants to spread this positive change, in other places as well.
And Z, you have a different perspective. How do you think your schooling might have been different if y'all had done circles?
Well, I feel like that if we would have done circles, that the behavior within the students would have been different. Like the consequences that they got for the behavior that they showed, I feel like that would have approached it different. Instead of like just acting out all the time, they would have had something to talk about within a circle and actually show people how they feel about the situation. But instead, they would just get in trouble and go into ISS all the time or get it suspended. So it didn't really show much of what they are and what they was. So it was really just chaos all the time. People were just in their own lanes, and people really wasn't talking out. Like if we seen a shy person, it really wasn't like, oh, we could get them out of their comfort zone, because we didn't have stuff like Lizbeth and LeKedric did.
So Z, can you talk about the first time you came? So you learned about circles in community. We would go to a library because they're free, and we would go once a month, and you showed up with 17 other girls. You didn't know,
Right.
11 zip codes. What was it like for you to participate in your first circle?
I would say that when I first came to my first circle, I wouldn't say that I was shy, because like I'm the type of person who always comes with like confidence. So I wouldn't say that my confidence was low, or my that I didn't believe in myself. But I would say that since I did come into the circle, that it has gotten better than what it was from the beginning. I do believe in myself a little bit more than what it was before. And coming into the circle with a whole bunch of girls, it kind of grew like a bond between me and the other girls. I look up to them, they look up to me, and it's just really a bonding thing.
And Z, I really love, you were the oldest student and now you've graduated, so you're an alum. I remember I asked you, what was it like being the oldest person And I just wanted people to know about your humility. You said, I didn't really realize I was the oldest person. I just think people in this group are so wise, and I've learned from all of them. And I just thought that was such a beautiful, it showed me your personality in a way that I really appreciated. Can you talk about, and we can start with Miss Lapin, students, what is the challenge? Y'all are young. What is the challenge of doing circles with adults?
So I feel like a challenge, because I would say I did my first ever circle with adults, and my first time ever doing a circle was with adults. And at that time, I would say I was very nervous. I'm not really a nervous type of person, but at that time I was pretty nervous. I was like, dang, I'm the one that they're gonna have to listen to. I'm the leader. Like, I'm basically the teacher in the situation, and they're gonna have to listen to me, and I'm making the rules, so they have to follow my rules. So I would say that is what like kind of puts me on like a little nervous, because like, what if they don't want to? They're adults. They can make their own decisions. So if like they want, they can just get up and walk out if they want to, or if they wanted to get on their phone or anything and not paying attention, they could if they wanted to, because they, I feel like they're older. But then like, as I went through the circle, I realized like, okay, it's just age is just really is the number. They're just regular people just like you. They have their own mindsets, and like, they're gonna follow what you say because they chose to be in that circle and they chose to be in that space. So they would have a little sense to do that. But yeah, I feel like that's the only thing that I would struggle with, is like knowing that older people listening to the younger person.
Yes.
For me, the first circle with adults was actually a circle just of adults in actually a conference for the
the
Houston
one with
community.
Oh,
for
okay.
Public Voices.
Community Voices for Public
Yes.
Education. You were training them.
Yeah, that was the first like circle I did with adults. And the first challenge, it started with me. It was an inner challenge. I was very doubtful of myself because it was my first time leading with adults. And these people, they weren't just regular adults from the street. They were like former principals, they were teachers. These are people that have had lots of experience, have gotten degrees, are very, very educated. And then there was me, who I haven't even graduated high school yet, but I'm trying to facilitate a circle and get all these people on board with a topic. And it was just challenging for me trying to balance everyone's mindsets because everyone has different backgrounds. They all came from different schools, so they had different perspectives. But it was really, really nice to see that no matter all the differences that were around the circle, we all came together to a center point, and that's what really connected us because we all agreed that even though we all have different experiences, there's always room for change and there's always need for progression because yeah, we might be doing this for ourselves, but restorative justice is also about being selfless, and we all just really were trying to focus on the main cause, which was education for little people.
Z, what was it like leading your first circle? Can you tell us about that circle?
I would say that I was a little nervous for the first time, but after a while, when we all sat there and actually talked to each other and was just elaborating with each other, I feel like my confidence, it was good, and that I felt like I could talk to everybody and nothing was really different from me sitting in the circles and actually talking and listening to Miss Anita or whoever else I was in a circle with.
What was the topic of the circle?
Oh Lord.
That was the film one, the peyote?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, we had a community. We do monthly circles, and we watched a film about peyote being taken from the land, and it was a sacrament for the Native American church. Yeah.
Yes.
So we do have some questions and comments in the chat. So Tina Michael, hello, original Restorative Houston member from a decade ago. How did participating in circles affect your ability or way of listening to others? I'm going to let anyone who wants to start.
How did participating in circles affect your ability or way of listening to others? I would say how it affected my listening. Like, like I wouldn't say I wouldn't be just listening. Like I'm more of like taking in the information, like in a way, or like I'm basically paying attention to like the specific details. Like I try to like make sure, because like while they're telling me, like say if someone's telling me about a problem about them, then like I try to look for a specific question I could ask them about their problem. So say let me see if I can give an example. Say if someone like going through like a relationship and like they're going through like a situation and like they're having arguments with their boyfriend or something. So if that girl or woman, they say something specific like oh, he wanders off sometimes and doesn't reply to me as much. Is there a reason why he's not replying? Are you giving the same affection or something? Like I try to like think of conflict like questions where they can like respond to me and tell me like an answer in a way.
That's interesting.
For me, I used to be a very stubborn person, so I didn't always think I was right, but I did have very heavily arguments and evidence behind whatever my case was. But kind of like how LeKedric was saying, I started thinking about the reasoning behind the words, not just the words themselves. And I didn't just take it in, but I also acted on like whatever I was hearing, because yeah, I could just listen to you tell me about your problems, but could I do something about that? I can't fix your problems, but I could have conversations with you. I could give you advice. I could find ways to help you rather than just listen, because listening is more than just taking in, but it's actually acting on what they're saying. Because if you're not listening, then you're just hearing, and that's not what restorative justice is about.
Z, you want to answer that?
I would say that I am coming from the same perspective as Elizabeth and LeKedric, because I'm very a stubborn person, and that before I really wouldn't listen to what other people would have to say, but now that coming to the circles kind of helped me with that. I started listening to people more and how they feel. I try to consider everybody's feelings. So when it comes to trying to listen, I try to see where they're coming from, because everybody comes from a different perspective. So I think that's it.
Yeah, and I appreciate the perspective taking and LeKedric asking the questions. Like I think about why would someone behave that way? What is the root? And I think, well, I'm going to pause there. There's actually some really great questions here, but I just want to say one thing in doing intergenerational work that it's helped me do is actually listen. So I co-taught a college class with Cassandra yesterday, who was your teacher. And she said, we were Zooming. I want them to be in a circle and I want to do this. And my first instinct was like, no, we're doing it this way. And so I stopped myself and I'm like, wait, why not? I'm a little uncomfortable. That's okay. I'm always asking y'all to be uncomfortable. I need to be uncomfortable. So I think that's what it's helped me with. We had a question from, hi, Ram Bhagat. It's a pleasure to have you. I was wearing your t-shirt yesterday. So your question was, and then I'll also go back to Isaiah's question. Ram's question was, how do you see you're expanding to youth in other cities? I guess like working with youth in other cities.
Is that for you or for us?
Youth and Anita.
How do you
like what we have envisioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the virtual space is actually a beautiful space. So Heather Bly Manchester is on the call too, is a co-author, and we've talked about doing virtual circles with the youth in Oakland, or we can do circles with youth from anywhere. So I think the virtual space is a good entry point for doing that.
I think that, obviously as time is going on, kids are more inclined to go on social media or online. So it's a good way, because that's also another topic, how online or all these new electronics is impacting restorative justice. And sometimes people have negative views on it, but why not, use it for the better? Why not use it for things like restorative justice? These are topics and things that we could talk in here, out in the real world, and in different cities without even having to move like we are right now.
Yeah, I would also say online, but I would say it's better to do it in person because you're not really like I feel like online, it's okay. You can turn on your camera, but like I feel like in person you're gonna get that real connection. You can see the real like expression and stuff. Like it feel more realistic. Like you get the more real feel out of it. And yeah, that's my take on it.
Is Z still here? I'm not seeing Z. I'm not sure if she got dropped off the call. I want to go to Isaiah's question. What advice would you give teachers? Our lives are hard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I left, so I can't even say it anymore. But
Yeah.
they're closing down libraries. Teachers in HISD are getting fired. If they speak at a board meeting, the next day they get fired out of retaliation. So there's a lot of things happening. So yes, advise us.
I will speak from like personal perspectives of me being in a teacher role, and it's probably to not like stick to a structure. Like don't base your life as a teacher off of a script or off of a curriculum, because kids want to learn from actual people, not from robots. We're not we're not gonna sit here and watch someone read off a paper. Like actually don't just be there and do what you're told, but also put your own part in it. If you see a kid and you see that they're feeling down, you're like, well, we're not really supposed to engage with like that. As a human, like have some sort of what's it called? I forgot the word, but yes, have some sort of compassion and empathy. Yes. And also, this is some like advice that I got myself, and it's probably the way that you word things, because you may, in your mind, you might think that you're doing something right, and the way that you're saying something is going to come off the right way. But you have to keep in mind we are also young adults. We haven't experienced the world, so however we receive it is how we're gonna take it. You might have not meant it in that way, but that's how we're gonna take it. And there is this one case where I was a facilitator and I used the words, don't you think? But I got some wise advice, and it was like, you're not here trying to peer pressure one into anything or anything. And I changed my wording, and instead of don't you think, it would have been better to say, would you consider? Because you are an adult for a reason. You have all these experiences on your sleeves to share with the world, because why not?
Some advice I give for the teachers, I would say really just build a connection with the students before the lesson. Like, say before you're about to teach a lesson, take like 5, maybe like 10 minutes, hey, what y'all do today? What y'all do over the weekend? Try to just go walk around, talk to each one of them, see what they like. Once you find out the hobbies, then every time you come to the class, every like 10 minutes or 5 minutes before the class, y'all can keep touching on that subject, see how much what you learned, what you got out of the subject. And yeah, that's all about it really. Just make sure you build a connection with them so that y'all can, the student will have something to talk about once y'all come to that class, and they'll have like something to maybe look forward to. Maybe that student doesn't have that many friends or something like that. They'll be looking for that one conversation with that one teacher, and they'll be like, oh, okay, this is what they were looking for.
My understanding is in your English class, you circled every day. Okay. And if I asked their teacher, wait, was he in the RJ class or was he? She was like, all my students are in RJ classes. So I think that shows you a very revolutionary approach. Z, what advice would you give teachers?
I don't have much advice, but I would say to have patience with the students and really consider where they're coming from when they tell you how they feel or something that they want to tell you about what's going on at home or something like that. Just really have patience and really consider how they feeling. But that's about it.
I appreciate that. There's a question from Nuna Johnson. Hello. What kind of restorative justice city and world do you all dream of? I love questions about dreaming because that's what we did when we were starting our mission. We were dreaming. How do you see transformative justice intersecting? I don't know how familiar y'all are with transformative justice. It's a little bit different, but maybe the first part at least. What kind of RJ city and world do you all dream of?
So the world I say I would dream of is really just no conflict. Just like try to avoid misunderstandings in a way. Like, you know, all it really takes like to avoid a lot of things is just a talk. Like a lot of things could be avoided if a person would just take a time to just talk, hear another one of each other out, like another out, and then just actually listen, pay attention to what they're saying, and then like take back the information and then like kind of like work something out in a way. Like, you know, I feel like some people in the world, they wouldn't really like, I know some people in the world aren't really the same, you know, they probably don't like, you know, they wouldn't listen or they don't want to hear a lot of what another person wants to say, but just at least trying to, you know, talk it out and like have someone listen, and like maybe that would like kind of like avoid a lot of problems in the city.
I could agree with LeKedric. I mean, who wouldn't want a world that is no conflict, everyone's at peace, everyone's happy? But, you know, unfortunately, that's not the reality. But the reality is that when there is conflict, restorative justice can open opportunities for, you know, resolution. And it's not something that you need to travel. It's not something that you need to pay for. It's not something that you need to have anything. All you need to have is an open mind and your voice. And that's all that it takes. So if people actually take that into consideration and don't just try to be like, okay, agree. Well, you can agree to disagree as long as you don't make the conflict even worse or you don't expand on it. And instead of making matters worse, you could just use your restorative practices. So, which is why we're trying to spread this as much as we can.
Z, what is your dream for a restorative city?
I would say that I agree with Elizabeth and LeKedric. No conflict, more so of like a peace thing. But I will also say what Elizabeth said. There's no such thing as no conflict in a world like Houston or any world in that matter. It's just like you will have to take what you're dealing with and roll with it, and it's your decision to make it the situation better than what it is.
Yeah, and I think the second part of that question is great. Like, how does this work with transformative justice? So transformative justice, and anyone on the call can correct anything I'm saying, but it's the idea, you know, you can't restore harm in an institution that is in itself harmful. So if transformative justice would be to restructure and change the entire institution, that is a larger goal, which, like I said, I do feel like, you know, that liberation is part of our goal, which is why so much of our work is in the community. Because we can't, if the Houston Independent School District is literally shutting down libraries, right? How do I expose you to some of the books? You don't want them to be robots, but they're getting fired if they don't follow the curriculum. Y'all don't have this in your school. I'm just talking about other systems. So for us, I mean, we definitely have a transformative lens. It's not okay to, you know, just go in and do circles and try to solve conflicts if you still have an overly punitive system that is putting Black kids in in-school suspension more than other kids, and you're not having a root cause analysis. And I think that connects to Deborah's question about beyond experiencing circles, what training do you provide or recommend for student restorative justice leaders? And y'all can add, but I think what we do is we do a root cause analysis. We look at institutional systems and we say, why are so many kids of color being suspended more so than white students? And we examine statistics and we break it down. And so I think critical pedagogy has to be a part of what you do. This is not just, this comes from indigenous practices. We're going to sit in a circle, we'll build community, and we'll resolve conflict. It's bigger than that. So I think really giving them historical knowledge. And again, if we're banning books, if we're banning DEI, you know, we have to be able to offer a full education that they may not be aware of. Are you aware that Latino families could not speak Spanish in Texas? it was against the law. So just, I think, giving some of that history. Do y'all want to add more to that question?
Yeah, I can add something
Yeah.
to that. Like
Yeah.
training for the students.
Yeah, what more would students need in addition to circles?
Yeah, I would say to like be more like, well, if I was to do my own sort of training, I would put like a group of kids in like a public space type of thing. Like I would want them, how can I say that? Like I would, if this is for me personally, I would say like I would go out somewhere like just like a random place where there's a whole bunch of people publicly just walking around. And then like I would just kind of throw them out there and be like, hey, so like try to go make a friend really quick. Just a friend, just a random friend. I'm being so serious too. Like just like, go try to make a quick friend, you know, try to connect with the person real quick. Like you say, if you see somebody sitting down on the curb, sitting there by themselves, you see everybody else, they got their friends and buddies walking around and stuff, exploring downtown. And you see this one person, they just sitting there sad on their phone, not really like looking around, looking at the scenery. You go up to them, hey, how you doing? What's your name? You know, I see you sitting here by yourself, you know. You're not gonna like walk around and explore, you know. And if that person's sad, you can touch on that subject. Why are you sad? You know, you trying to have a walk and talk real quick, and then bam, right there, new friend made, new conversation made, and I feel like that would create like now that you know how to talk to like just someone that you just met that you don't even know. If you're able to make that type of connection with that person, then once you come over here to the restorative justice side, you can have a bunch of people just like that one person you met on the curb sitting there by themselves. It's going to be a bunch of people in the same circle. It's just going to be a bunch of them, and you just handing off the little piece. You're hearing them out, and then like you give them a question, and you can help them out on how to like, you know, fix any problem they have going on.
I agree with LeKedric, and I would say something that I would recommend. I haven't done it in such a severe case, but let's say that the topic is about, you know, like things going on in the world, maybe about homelessness. You know, getting one-on-one perspectives is something, like, to me, that is something that's very important, because that's one of the main things I love about circles and restorative justice is about getting perspectives. So I could talk about someone about their problem. Maybe I'm not recommending to go up and talk to a homeless person, but let's say that you want to learn more about, you know, why is he homeless? Why is this a problem? And how is like his experience similar to others' experience? And how can we create a bigger structure to make a movement about this? So I can get my own takeaway from his experience, and maybe just talking about his personal life is gonna be healing for him in his own way, and he can reflect on it, and you know, we can try and find, you know, a way to solve this problem. And it can go beyond homelessness. It could, like how Anita has been doing, she's been going to, you know, juvenile centers. Like, why is this kid in this position, and how can we like help avoid these type of conflicts? You know, that's for me is something that is really important.
So making sure to do the social interaction and going out in other spaces. Z, what else would you think that students would need to understand restorative justice besides the circle process?
From the top of my head, I wouldn't say that there's nothing more that we need to add, because I feel like everything that we're doing now is kind of helpful. So I don't really think of anything as of right now to say that we need to help more students, because I feel like we're doing such a good job to define what restorative justice is to children.
I would say, I think I understand what you're saying. A lot of what we do in circle is what I think you would need if you want to separate it from circle. One thing is self-regulation, things like breathing, things like grounding, those games and movement we play that Heather has taught us that we're going to be doing during International Restorative Justice Week, getting in our bodies and getting out of our bodies. You know, I think those are things that young people and adults need. And the other thing is, how do you tell a story? How do you tell your story? And vulnerability. So I think that there's soft skills that you can teach and practice through reading, through writing, through storytelling and then going out that I think is part of it. There is a question about systems. Isaiah said, Dr. Wadhwa, do you see school systems change with implementation of RJ? I've seen whole schools change. I think what y'all are doing here, I think what we did in Northbrook, I saw a change. Then what happens is, what if a leader leaves? What if the money for a restorative justice coordinator goes away? So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know about whole systems change. I know Oakland has done wonderful things, and I know that their funding has been cut dramatically. So I think it creates changes, but I think some of the metrics people use to define the success of those changes are not holistic. So they can say, look, we've reduced suspensions, but I couldn't really tell you what the classroom culture is necessarily like. Or maybe they don't have critical pedagogy. Maybe they're following a really unrestorative curriculum. So I can't give a solid answer for that. Erica Lapin, their teacher, says, one thing that's been really useful around here, restorative conversations and friend groups. I think this sort of ripples out beyond institutions, and that's kind of what we're after, is like the ripple effect of us taking it with us outside of the institutions. Ron Bogut says he's going to be in Houston. Yes, I would love to take you out and can all have a meal together. That would be great. So Isaiah, I'm sorry, I don't have a satisfying question for you. Erica had a good question, which is, as tempting as it, or a comment, as tempting as it can be to burn it all down, many of us find ourselves exploring spaces we can impact within our spheres of influence. You have a question with that, Erica, or just, I think that's a great comment. And I wouldn't want people to think that our whole philosophy is burn it all down, because we can't. Y'all have to show up to a school every day.
Yeah.
People are showing up to hospitals every day. People are in the prison system every day. So I think there's got to be multiple things happening to try to impact that change. And Jonathan, that is the questions that I have. And then Nuna had a question. How has your families and home communities responded to what you're learning? Do they notice? Do they care? Do they see a difference? Are they resistant?
I can't say mine does care. I mean, like, she'll look at it, but like because like me personally, in my situation, I only really have one parent like in my family right now. It's just my mom, but it's because that's the rest of the family. They all live in like Arkansas, and that's where I'm from. That's where I'm originally from. So like, it's just me and my mom down here in Texas and Houston. So it's like, yeah. And I'm not really in contact with the rest of the family. So it's like, I'll tell her about it, but like, she kind of like brushes past it, but I can kind of understand though, because she has other things going on in her life that she's trying to get done. But most of the time I just probably go tell like different teachers or like, other like, anybody else, like, I don't really like family wise. Nah, they don't really know really.
Well, my mother, she immigrated at a very young age from Honduras to the US, and she came from a very large family, and it was very low income. So her own opinion to her, sometimes it didn't seem as important, like due to the circumstances they were in, and obviously having so many outside voices around you, you just kind of stay to yourself. And that's the way that she has navigated life. She has just kept everything to herself, and the school system has impacted her in many ways, not with me, because I try to follow the rules as best as possible, but I do have siblings who aren't as willing to do as they're told, and that has impacted her, but she has been carrying that with her. And she actually decided to join Circle one day because Anita had invited her, and she actually got to truly experience what it was like to having her voice heard. She got to experience what it was like to let out her feelings, and she got some sort of answers, because it was either just the school getting on her, getting on my brother, just telling her, oh, okay, if he doesn't stop doing this, we're gonna have to do this, or you're gonna need to take time out of your day to do this. And it just seemed like they were just throwing a lot on my mother and on my brother, when, like you said, the school as a whole, as an institution, that's where the healing should be happening, because that's where the harm is occurring. But she had to carry that with her. And in circle, she got to fully express, how she truly felt about it, because she couldn't tell the teacher in their face, or she couldn't tell the principal, oh yeah, I don't like how you guys talk to my son, I don't like how you guys are always contacting me, because that would have obviously escalated. But she got to let out her feelings, and she actually started crying, and she got very vulnerable. And it was a state where I saw my mother more as a mother, but I saw her as I always saw her as a human being. But, she actually had so much within her that I couldn't see through my own eyes, but through the scopes of restorative justice, I saw. And, with her, she's now very, very supportive of everything that I'm doing. And she will be watching this later. So I love you, Mom.
She cried in circle.
Yeah, she
I didn't
did.
know about that.
Mhm.
See, what about you? Has your family noticed any difference, the community, or?
I would say that my mom has noticed difference, but it's not like as far as what Elizabeth's mom has went through. Hers is more so of like within me. She has said multiple times that she sees that I have matured, and that I don't let conflict get in the way of me succeeding to do things that I needed to do. She said that my attitude has gotten better, and that I don't really show much attention to what my younger siblings has going on, because usually I will interact, like if we will have an argument within each other, I will interact and argue with them back. But now I just like tune them out, and I like stay in my own space and let them talk to themselves, much as just arguing back and forth with them. So it's more of so that she notices that the RJ circle has, or the sister circle has, changed me into really just listening to people and really not caring about nonsense, actually.
Hmm. Jennifer McCready, it's wonderful to see you. This is another restorative justice practitioner who's worked with pre-K all the way up to adults with special needs. It's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your mother's experience. Yeah, I would say, to go to Ms. Lapin's question, is what's your sphere of influence? I feel like, and how can you make the most of your healing power within that sphere? It seems like it's already happening. The sphere of influence is your family or your friend group. And I think with me, and Erica and I talk about this, it's not just about a circle, and it is about being in circle when you're not in circle, but it's also a dot. So my sphere of influence is myself every day. What am I doing to be transformative, to be liberatory? And then it's a line, it's our conversation, and then it's our triangle, the three of us. So I think that that's our sphere of influence. And also thinking about our history and our ancestors, I think, is important to explain, like, why are our mothers the way they are? Why are our, grandparents the way they are? And I know even with my mom, with even us having a contentious relationship going on, the only reason I'm doing the work I'm doing now is because of my mom, because she has so much fire, right? Because she sees something wrong, she wanted to fix it. Now, did we communicate nicely about it? No. So I think me acknowledging, people are complex. And even when you think, this thing gets on my nerves about this person, what is the good thing in that person? And actually honoring that good thing. So same to my mom as well. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions. I am going to share one slide before there's any final thoughts, just in case you're wondering, what is Restorative Houston up to, or what can you do to support? International Restorative Justice Week is coming, and we're partnering with Creative Change Collaborative. They've created this beautiful book, Learning to Play, Playing to Learn, that's really influenced what we're doing in Houston. And they're doing a Games and Movement for Circle online training. So we're just collaborating, co-sponsoring with them. And we'll be doing a silent auction fundraiser we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram at Restorative Houston, and we're on Facebook, LinkedIn. And so just, I think, spreading the word about what we're doing, and giving us, how shall I put it, moral support, because it's not easy out here. I'll tell you, it's doing the work is beautiful and it's great, but it's all the grunt work of where are we going to find money? How are we going to get hired in this system? How do we explain this when this might be counter to the philosophy of a school district or a prison? And there's a lot of wonderful people in Houston. And I think right now we're just trying to build those relationships. So if anyone can connect us, we'd be open to that. And Erica Laban asks, what is an intergenerational circle you'd love to be in, but you have not been in yet? So across age groups, like what's an age group or that you would love to circle with?
That's a good question, Ms. Laban. I would say between 35 and 25. I want to see, like, I would want to have a circle with them specifically about, like, well, first, like, how, actually, no, let me change that, actually. 30 through 35. I want to have a talk about, like, you know, how much have you gotten out of life? Like, have you, like, you know, experienced everything you wanted to do? Because, you know, like, during that's like your prime ages, between 20 up until like 30. Like, between those years, like, you know, that's your prime time right there. You do whatever you want. Like, you're young, you're in between adult young, and you're like, you're out living life. So, like, I want to, like, ask some questions about, like, how's life going? Like, are you satisfied? Have you completed everything in your life? Have you accomplished anything? Like, I wouldn't have a circle like that between that age group, you know?
For me, I would love to have a circle of immigrants, but the intergenerational part would be like maybe the time they immigrated. And when I want to see how different the experience have been, like someone that immigrated to the US from age 5 to maybe someone that immigrated to the age of 25. And I want to see, like, is there more restorative that needs to be done through this age group or this age group? And I would prefer if they are all like inexperienced, like that they have never done restorative justice before, so they can truly like feel the impact. And yeah.
Zia, what's a circle you would want to do across generations? What age group or what group?
I would say females from the ages 19 through 25, just to see what what things do they want to accomplish that they haven't accomplished, and like what things have they gone through that they feel like no one has recognized. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I like that, y'all. This is a fascinating question. I think I would want to do a circle with elders who experienced partition in Houston, and it would have to be delicate. I mean, it's a very sensitive topic, but knowing that my ancestors actually came from what is now Pakistan, and kind of the anti-Pakistan sentiment that you can hear in the Indian community growing up is kind of like you grow up against yourself, if that makes sense. Even though we come from the same land, I think it could be a very healing space.
Thank you all so much. I love this idea of like the intergenerational aspect. So how is it that we received that this is the world that we received? Like, what do folks that are further along in this journey know about that? And then like folks who aren't quite as far along the journey in us, what do they see? Like, what is the world that they want? And we so seldom talk about that across generations. So loving this conversation. I want to give each of you a chance to do a final thought. So just a sentence or two, a final thought that you'd offer, perhaps about this particular webinar, your experience, or what's something that you are looking forward to in this in the category of restorative justice. Like, what are some next ideas and dreams that you have?
I would say what I would have next up is like this going off on my own and doing my own thing once because right now I'm about to go to college after this. So, after 12th grade, then I'm off to college. So I feel like if I could bring it up to college with me, wherever college I end up going to, I can maybe create, because I know in college you can create your own clubs, coach your own like thing going on. So I feel like if I can create one, or if there's one already created, join it, try to like make it as big as I can and like try to make it like a routine type of thing, make something out of it. And yeah, I say that's my next future steps if I can, if it's possible. Yeah.
I agree with LeKedric. One of the main things that colleges ask, like what is it that you bring to us, or what is it that you have that can make our campus even greater? And restorative justice is definitely an amazing thing. But obviously, before I try to create a new community out of this and bring this to other communities, I also want to, have restorative justice in my own community. So I would definitely want to have more, because I have had my fair share of circles, but I want to have more like one-on-one experiences of restorative justice, like how you go to different facilities and stuff. I would love to do that and have like one-on-one conversations about someone who's actually experienced something rather than just hearing about it.
Z, any final thoughts?
I would say that my dream is that restorative justice gain the money that they need to become more of within Houston, or even more worldwide. I feel like that we need to expand for I feel like for everyone, so everyone can receive the acknowledgement that we are getting, and that the confidence that everyone needs to get to the confidence that we have. But that's about it.
Beautiful. And I would just say that the vision is, at our next community circle, we have some young people coming from one of the youth detention facilities. And so the idea of carving out the community spaces for people who are in institutions, whether it's in schools, wherever, that we can create healing spaces, like Erica said, in our sphere of influence, that we just continue to do that. And the money will come, but we just have to be in community and supporting. And I'm just trying to lay a foundation so that these people or your peers will run the organization when I'm gone, and that we're creating a legacy. So that's basically our vision right now.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to take you all off stage for now. And I'm going to add this as a way to let you all know of our upcoming webinar. So we're sort of sticking with this theme of like youth engagement and the necessity, the requirement actually for all of us to engage intergenerationally. So our webinar next month in November 20th is going to be with Dr. Tanya Walls and Code Switch, Restorative Justice for Girls of Color. So plan to join us for that. You can find the registration link for that on our website, zerinstitute.org. And also just another plug, please feel free to visit our site. There's information about past webinars. There's information about future webinars. And we're always interested in your ideas for what's interesting for you. What is a webinar that you might find interesting? And we can be in communication about that. But again, thank you so much to our guests, and thank you all for joining us today. See you next time.